Ibk, how are you?
I'm good, man. How are you?
Good. I think that's the quickest I've been able to or we've been able to get the guest on. All my recordings of this have been like either me just staring at the camera while I try to figure that out, or last time I like slid off camera like this so that it wasn't quite so much Chris time. But anyway, this was fast.
No, hey, I am the police.
How are you?
I'm doing well. I'm doing well. It's a sunny day, a little cold here in LA. Well, cold, but doing all right. Doing all right. How are you?
Doing good. I was thinking about how long it's been. You graduated in 2017, yeah?
Yeah. Spring.
So coming up on 6 years. That's pretty wild.
Cannot believe it.
I know I've got a lot more gray hairs than when you left a few years
It
ago.
looks good on you. It looks good.
So I'm looking forward to this conversation, man. I mean, one, I'm interested in catching up with you. I always enjoyed our conversations. I think I worked with you for maybe a year because I believe you were Miss Andrea's advisee prior to that, if I remember correctly. But I always enjoyed our chats. I always enjoyed kind of getting to know you and seeing where your head was at and where you wanted to go. And so now it'll be fun for me to kind of catch up and see where you've been and also where you're headed.
Yeah, no, I'm excited to talk to you. I enjoyed our talks.
Yeah, so welcome back. I know I'm actually on a little bit of a tighter timeline than I normally am because I do have a 2 p.m. I have to get to. So let's jump right into it. Kind of, for those who end up watching this, tell us your story, especially kind of where you're from, where you grew up, and how you found yourself at the University of Miami.
Yeah, so I grew up in Omaha, Nebraska. So if you're picturing a map of the U.S., right in the middle. So if I said the beach wasn't part of my decision to go to Miami, I'd be lying a little bit. But I also had some family that lived in the area, and I was pretty set on the major that I wanted to do, and Miami had a great program for that. And then when you add on the opportunity that the Hammond Scholarship provided, it kind of made Miami feel like a really great choice.
Cool. Well, was it as different from where you grew up as maybe you expected, or how did that line up for you?
Yeah, very different. I mean, so I think just the culture, the diversity was very different and was nice. I mean, even just talking geographically, right? Like landlocked to the ocean was pretty wild. And then I think just you add on the shift of college and being on your own, it felt like a 180. It was very different.
I'm sitting here thinking back to graduation time, the year that you graduated, and at that time we were part of Senior Wombo. I believe that year it was, and I remember committing to try to say your full name as you walked across the stage, and the moment came, and I don't know that I've experienced the sense of like trepidation and anxiety like that since then. So you go by IBK, but why don't you share your full name?
Yeah, so Ibk Awodele is my full name. It's Nigerian. It means blessing from God. But growing up in the U.S., IBK, just a lot easier for people.
A lot easier to navigate. When you break it down and you say it slowly, it makes perfect sense, and it's actually fairly straightforward. But then you try to put it together maybe in a moment of all eyes on you, and it's a little different.
Yeah, no, I don't recall my mom being angry, so
okay, good. So talk a little bit about being a Hammond. What did it mean for you to be a Hammond Scholar?
Yeah, I mean, of course, on the financial level, it took a load off, right? I think it really freed me to focus on my studies and be able to kind of, as we talked in my last year, approach decisions like grad school based on what I thought was holistically best for me. So that was awesome. I think on an academic level, I think it brought a great level of accountability and support that was really awesome. And I really felt like some of my peers weren't able to be afforded just because of the ratios of counselors within their specific college. which was awesome. And then I think just on a social level, right? You're going to a new place, you're on your own, and I think to have kind of a built-in community of scholars, other people that are looking to kind of better themselves and achieve academically, that you can kind of connect with and know, right? I remember the first week of school, right, because we had already been there, being able to feel like I knew people around campus when other friends were trying to get up to speed and meet people, and that was invaluable.
Yeah, your class was, I remember, sort of known internally as being a especially close and social and kind of connected class, and every group kind of has their own identity. But that head start you mentioned, that's been a real challenge the last few years with COVID. Students' college careers have started in a lot of different ways. Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about your experience at UM, and maybe let's start outside the classroom. Best you recall, what were some of your main commitments and involvements on campus?
Yeah. I was involved in a lot of stuff, but I think the two things that really have stuck with me a lot are, from my sophomore year on, I was in an RA, and I think just the empathy and leadership skills that just kind of bakes into you was something that I carry to this day, and that I really helps shape how I approach situations and things that might be awkward, or having tough conversations, or being able to kind of offer advice. I also, oddly enough, I ended up joining the improv team, which was super fun. And I think just aside from the fun and the friends that you kind of make in that, I think just being able to be comfortable in ambiguity, you don't know where things are going, and being able to kind of go with the flow and keep things moving is something that is very useful in my life to this day.
Yeah, so I was always really fascinated that you were in the improv group. So was that something that you had done before? Did you do some acting earlier? Had you had an interest in that? Or was it kind of the opposite, like you were looking to stretch out and do something new?
I had never done that before. So one of the guys that was an RA with me my sophomore year was like, hey, you're pretty funny. And I had I think I'm funny, but in we know each other, I'm going to make a remark kind of way. But he really encouraged me to try it for the team. He was on it. And it was definitely a growing thing for me, right? Really getting comfortable with finding structure where there isn't structure. So it was something I had not done before, had not done anything like that before. But really glad that I did it.
Cool. That's great. So let's talk about inside the classroom. In my head, you were an industrial engineering major, but that's not the case. You're biomedical. Talk a little bit about how you chose your major, if you ever wavered in that progression, and kind of what the vision was, especially starting out to maybe by the time you graduated.
Yeah. I mean, so as a kid, I was always into logic, right? I think that was kind of born. I just wanted to understand things. That kind of expressed itself in me being very good at math, right? So when you're good at math, they kind of push you towards engineering, and I kind of took to that. And between that and my mom being a physician, and out of that really wanting to understand the body, and having the opportunity to kind of take some classes at medical schools and see that up close. I think in my head, the logic of it was yeah, why don't I just combine these things, right? As soon as I found out there was engineering of medicine and that kind of stuff, I really gravitated towards it, and it played a big part in my decision in coming to Miami. Definitely had second thoughts. It's a tough major. It's not for the faint-hearted. I feel like they're really they push you on the engineering side. They push you on the medical side. There were definitely times that I had doubts, but I think it grew me. It grew me for the better, right? I think like a lot of smart kids, I kind of came into college thinking I'm smart, I can do this on my own, right? I can just kind of figure this out on my own. And through a lot of tough humblings in classes, you know, you kind of learn that to do this, you need to work with others. You need to kind of collaborate and study in groups, and really you're working towards the understanding of the material, right? And not like winning courses. So, you know, even though I don't work in the biomedical field now, I that was how I got into the degree, and I finished with the degree, and I don't regret it.
Mm. Were you ever pre-med, or was that not part of the plan?
No. Pre-med was not for me. I was thinking like devices, tech by the end, and you know, I did kind of end up in the tech sphere. So
Yeah. Okay, so I remember when you shared with me that your plans were to go to grad school and the programs that you were looking at, and it was kind of a new area for me. I didn't know kind of what it was. So talk a little about that. How did you identify? Well, first, how did you decide you wanted to go to graduate school? I have a lot of students who are really on the fence about that and not sure whether they want to go to school for a couple more years. And so what was kind of your thought process there? And then how did you decide which direction to step in next?
yeah. So in terms of deciding, you know, I want to go to grad school, I had kind of known by senior year through some experiences, like, okay, I don't want to work in a lab. This is not really for me. So in my head, grad school made sense in terms of a pivot, right? And really gaining skills to help me go in another direction. And so again, in like the putting things together with like engineering and medicine, right? In my time, like in engineering, right, I had seen a lot of people really obsessed with focusing on like the latest thing, the coolest thing, right? But I had also seen how sometimes simple things can have big impact, right? And I really wanted in my head to think like, how can I get better at assessing those things, right? How can I make sure that I'm not, you know, going down the wrong path because it's a cool technology or it's a cool project, and how do I make sure that what I'm doing, you know, really makes a difference and has an impact? So in my head, I was like, I know a lot about technology, I know a lot about engineering, but I don't know about business, right? I don't know, you know, how these people that are making decisions make those decisions. So I had kind of heard about, you know, engineering management as a program, right? Which kind of strives to be this combination of, you know, engineering plus business, right? And so, you know, saw a couple of programs, ended up getting into the one at Dartmouth, which is kind of cool because their engineering building is literally connected to their business school. And the space for the engineering management department sits in a bridge between them. So I thought it was a perfect environment, a perfect setting to really kind of pursue that.
Cool. So before we go further down your story for what happened next or what that experience was like, let's back up for one more moment to your undergrad days. How did you spend your summers? That's something we talk a lot with students about.
Yeah. So I spent a lot of my summers with like a national health insurance provider, right? First, Wisconsin Physician Service is the name. Initially, I was in IT, actually, which was some of my first exposure to data in like the corporate setting, right? And you know, working with stakeholders and trying to figure that out in terms of like, where is the data? How can they get access to it? And what do they need to do with it? And eventually, by the end of, you know, after a couple of summers there, I also was working with healthcare providers, right, that interfaced with the company and their needs as they tried to figure out how to process and handle claims.
Okay, cool. So you
Yeah.
did that on multiple summers.
Yeah. And I thought it was, you know, some of the beginnings looking back in terms of, again, my start in data, right, and being able to work with like internal and external stakeholders on what you can do with data and the importance of it.
Gotcha. Okay, so let's jump back to finishing up grad school, or maybe just your grad school experience overall, if you want to kind of outline what that was like, maybe in contrast to undergrad. So how you viewed the difference between grad and undergrad. And then also how you identified how you would navigate the job search. Where was your head at in terms of segueing to a career, and how did you find your opportunities?
Yeah. So grad school was different in, I thought, like really great ways, right? Like, I think undergrad, for great reasons, right, is trying to form you into this like well-rounded person. You need to take a lot of different classes in a lot of different areas. And I think grad school is just like, you're here for this thing, you know? You've got, and especially I think Dartmouth had like a trimester kind of setup. So their idea was kind of, you're going to do less classes really intensely at a short time, and we're just going to get through 3 of these instead of 2 semesters of a lot of classes. And for me, who really likes to, you know, hone in and focus on something, that was perfect, right? With the skills that I had kind of come out of undergrad of like collaborative learning and really knowing more an idea of what you want to do, and you know what you're working towards, right? Instead of just the degree per se. I thought grad school, if you're equipped and self-motivated, I thought it was a really great space to learn, right? And then you asked about like approaching the job search and that kind of stuff. I think especially if you're in like a short grad program, like 2 years, right? It can seem kind of overwhelming because you just want to start grad school, but you almost kind of need to start that search at the same time in terms of networking and talking to people and figuring out like what interests you and what doesn't interest you, right? And start, you know, asking people just out of, you know, curiosity, setting up calls like this, right? And even if it doesn't lead to an internship, you never know what it leads to down the road, and really taking that approach as you're thinking and as you're moving around. So between years of grad school, I had the opportunity to kind of intern with Amazon, and the opportunity actually came from a fellow alum who was working at Amazon at the time. And so that was, you know, a great chance to kind of, you know, pitch yourself and kind of say like, hey, like I've done these things in the past, like with the insurance company that I was talking about, I'm in this program working towards these goals, right? And just being able to try it, right? And whether you like it or you don't like it, right? It's a chance to kind of get your feet wet.
Mm. Okay. So you enjoyed those experiences, those were valuable, and that's what led directly to a full-time offer after you finished?
Definitely. So I worked with sponsored advertising at the time, right? Which is all about like you go to Amazon, you search for like toilet paper, right? There's like a bidding war going on because Charmin wants to show up at like the top or something, right? Not every spot, but some spots. And it's like the business I wasn't that crazy about, right? Like, oh, like advertising or, you know, advertising in search results. But like the function of what I did and being able to use data to answer questions, right? And see what I could do even in just a summer, right? To help a team move forward and think about their approaches to things was super cool. And that made me kind of jump on the offer to, you know, just return to the company and do the same thing functionally.
Gotcha. And so has that role evolved over time, or has that kind of been your focus for these last few years?
Definitely evolved. So when I, you know, returned, they ended up extending the offer for the function. And it was kind of like, if you want, you can kind of find your own role, right? And somebody had reached out and kind of said like, hey, I'm in, you know, Santa Monica, and I'm with the Amazon Studios team, and are you interested? And I was like, yeah, definitely. I'm preparing in my mind to go to like Seattle in the winter, but LA, it was great. And I started in Amazon Studios, just for broader context, right, is like thinking about Amazon's original content, right, that it makes. So things like The Boys, Invincible, Lord of the Rings, right, that kind of stuff. Started reporting on our shows, but had the opportunity pretty quickly after getting there, maybe like a year or so, to help start our programming strategy team as a data scientist, where, you know, I really help us bring the data that we have to bear to help us think about, who is our audience and how do we best, acquire, engage, and retain them globally.
Very cool. So how many of you are there? How many people are there on that team doing that type of work?
Yeah. So it's, in terms of that specific type of work, I would say it's just me, but we're happy to say that we just, brought on a new hire and we're bringing somebody up to speed on it. We definitely have support from other like specialized data roles too, in terms of people thinking specifically about data engineering or business intelligence too.
Cool. Very good. So one theme that we touch on a lot with our students is sort of the idea, many of our high achieving students have this very linear idea of setting a goal and sort of following the steps to get to that goal. And when things don't always go according to plan, it's sometimes, it can be difficult. It can be a challenge to navigate through that. To what extent, and I believe I know the answer to this, was becoming a data scientist at Amazon Prime Video ever a goal of yours when you were 18 or 19 years old?
I can't even tell you if I knew what that was at 18 or 19 years old, which definitely speaks to the point you're getting at, right? Of like, you can make a lot of plans, but you need to be open definitely to, life presenting alternative paths and opening different doors. And I think it's certainly, good to have plans, right? That helps you set a trajectory. But, it's along that path that, you find the opportunities that you didn't know exist and, make for really exciting careers and life in general.
Yeah, no, I think it's that journey that I think is important to sort of leave yourself open to discovery. So I think you highlighted that really nicely. I also think it's important to point out, you have a very difficult major in biomedical engineering, and the work you're doing does not necessarily connect to that. However, you found a ton of value in what you did. And that's another thing that I really do try to impress upon the students I work with is sometimes I think it's worthwhile to separate your education from your career goals. The education, you're trying to learn something about some specific corner of the world. And that really enhances who you are and who you'll become and how you view things and how you navigate the world. But what you choose to do with that knowledge and exposure and information is kind of up to you in a lot of ways. And I think your story really builds that bridge in a sequential and logical, but also a disconnected kind of a way, which I think is how it usually works.
No, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. So IBK, kind of in closing, I don't know how much you think about your undergraduate days or, the ups and downs of the experience, but what kind of advice would you give to, your average student here at the University of Miami?
Yeah. Talking about the themes that we've been talking about, right? I would kind of say two big things jump to my mind, right? Like one, take the opportunity to try things, whether it's working in labs or with professors or internships or even just, shadowing somebody at their job for a day or something. Like the ideas that you have in your head are always going to be a little different than their reality, right? And doing things like that, trying things, lets you test that concept, lets you test that idea, and lets you see, ASAP whether that's, actually the direction you want to go in, and helps you be flexible and move in those different directions. And the second thing I would say is, just work with others, right? I think that, built into school are these like titles and terms like valedictorian and salutatorian, but like school's not a competition and the real world and work is not, a competition, right? It's really about, taking the time to work through ideas and projects with your peers and really making sure that you for yourself understand the material, right? And that helps you in turn make better and more informed, choices about the opportunities that present themselves to you.
IBK, that feels like a really good place to kind of close things. I think that's a wise message to send.
Yeah. Thank you. Thanks for having me, and really appreciate the opportunity to kind of share my story a little bit.
Yeah. Well, we appreciate it, IBK. I mean, it's good to see you. It's good to catch up with you and hear from you. Let's stay in touch. And next time you're in Miami, make sure you stop by.
Absolutely. All right. Have a good one.
All right, my friend. Take care.
Bye.